The snap of the judge's gavel still rang in my ears when I heard my daughter-in-law whisper, "She's a burden." Still, I kept my hands folded, the medical binder resting on my lap like a loaded weapon. As her fake tears began to fall, the courtroom air turned colder, or maybe that was just the truth settling. While the paper was passed down the bench, I watched her eyes flicker not from guilt but fear. The same woman who told my son I'd drain them dry now stared at a signed transfer of full ownership in my name. That's when I knew she thought I was old. I was just patient. We're about to begin, but if you'd like, share where you're joining from. It reminds me this story doesn't echo into silence, it lands somewhere real. Drop it in the comments and don't forget to subscribe. I wasn't eavesdropping, I was heading toward the kitchen. My slippers didn't make much sound on the hardwood, and then I heard my name, or maybe not my name exactly. The word she, flattened, weaponized. "She's just here to rot, can't die fast enough." Brianna's voice, tight and annoyed, floated down the hallway from the living room. I stopped mid-step, the air catching in my throat. The tone wasn't new, the words were. Jason's voice followed lower, "Keep your voice down." That was it, not a protest, not a defense, not even a whispered "don't say that," just "keep your voice down," like the problem was the volume, not the sentiment. I stayed frozen in place, not out of fear, just disbelief. That sentence, "can't die fast enough," it split something clean inside me, something quiet and steady like a clock. And I knew right then that whatever I had been telling myself, that I was giving them time, giving Jason a chance, giving Eli stability, wasn't just wrong, it was dangerous. I backed up carefully, retracing my steps like a soldier disarming a tripwire. That night when I went to take my medication, I noticed the bottles had been rearranged. Not just moved, tampered with. One had a different cap. Another looked like it had fewer pills than yesterday. My name was on all the labels, but the pills inside didn't match what I remembered. Maybe they were the same, maybe not. I didn't take any. Instead, I opened my nightstand drawer and pulled out the notebook I used to keep grocery lists and Eli's soccer schedule. I flipped past the pages, past the cheerful ink and reminders about meatloaf and laundry detergent until I found a blank sheet. Date, time, location, word said who was present. I logged everything, not just what I heard, but how Jason didn't stop her, how I felt, what the pill bottles looked like. I wrote it down like I was reporting a theft, because that's what it was, the quiet theft of dignity, of safety. I didn't cry, I did confront, I didn't slam any doors. I simply shut mine. The next morning I moved slowly. Not because of age, but because I didn't want them to hear the shift in me. I knew the performance well enough, smile just enough, speak just enough. Pour the coffee. Thank Brianna for the mail, even when I saw her glance at the envelopes like she was checking for checks or medical notices. She barely looked up. Jason sat scrolling on his phone, muttering something about the lawn needing mowing. I said nothing. I just sipped my coffee and noted how they'd both stopped looking me in the eye. After breakfast, I quietly checked the bottles again, still wrong. I placed them in a Ziploc bag and tucked them into the back of the linen closet behind old towels no one used. Then I opened my laptop, created a folder, password protected. I named it something simple. Burden Log 1. Inside, I typed up my notes, reworded them cleanly, no emotion, just data, evidence, like the union reps used to tell us back at the postal office: document first, react later. Eli came home from school that afternoon with grass stains on his jeans and a loose shoelace trailing behind him. He hugged me in the hallway before Brianna could stop him. "I missed you today," he said, voice muffled against my sweater. I smiled and hugged him back, but something inside me had shifted, not cold, not cruel, just done. That night, I slid the notebook under my mattress and slept with the door locked for the first time since moving in. The next morning, I stood at the window with my coffee, staring at the brittle leaves trembling on the tree out front. Brianna came into the kitchen, her heels clicking, her voice light and sing-song. "We should look at long-term care options," she said, like she was talking about a new couch. "There's a place in Monroeville with decent reviews." Jason and I were just thinking. I turned slowly, set my mug down without a sound, and I looked her in the eye for the first time in weeks. I didn't say a word. She blinked. Then, for just a second, only a flicker, I saw something pass over her face. Worry. The garage was cold and still. I waited until I was alone, Brianna out at Target, Jason glued to the television upstairs, B4 slipping out there with a tote bag and purpose. It didn't take long to find the file box, blue tape across the lid, Jason's scrawl, mortgage docs. I opened it and flipped past closing forms, insurance estimates, appliance warranties. My name was nowhere. I remembered when they bought this house. Jason had just lost his job at the steel supplier, Brianna was pregnant, their apartment lease was ending and they couldn't afford anything. Jason had come to me with red eyes and promises. We just need a little help with the down payment, Mom, something stable. I'll put your name on the deed, of course I will. I wrote the check 2 days later, covered the washer and dryer, the refrigerator, even the new patio furniture Brianna couldn't live without. And then nothing, no deed, no title, no mention again. I dug deeper, pulling out old receipts I'd saved in a file of my own, buried beneath holiday decorations. That's when it hit me, I hadn't just given, I'd invested, and they'd rewritten history like I never existed in it. I scanned the documents onto my phone one by one, naming them by date and purpose. I created a new folder on my laptop. Burden evidence. There was no anger in it, just precision. The next morning, I poured coffee while Brianna dried a pan too aggressively. She didn't look at me. Water and heating aren't free, Helen, she muttered. I didn't flinch, just sipped, logged the comment in my notebook that I kept tucked between crossword puzzles, then placed my mug in the sink and walked away. Jason sat at the table flipping through the mail. We've been thinking, he began, not looking up. It might be time to look into, long-term care, something safe, structured. I looked at the back of his head, at the man I'd raised who now couldn't meet my eyes. Just thinking about options, he added too quickly. I said nothing. After they left that afternoon, probably to brunch or browse furniture stores for a life they thought would start once I was elsewhere, I opened my laptop again. This time I wasn't just storing, I was building a timeline. Down payment, check $17.92. Appliances, Best Buy invoice, my car. Lawn install, paid in full, my name on the landscaping receipt. It added up fast, quiet math with loud meaning. That evening, Eli came home from school with a paint-smudged folder. Inside was a drawing of the house. I made this for you, he said, 'cause you always water the plants. There was a little figure on the porch. Glasses, gray hair, a cat in her lap. I almost laughed. I don't have a cat. I kissed his forehead and said, "Thank you, sweetheart." Then I tucked it into my journal where I'd been logging everything else. Later, while brushing my teeth, I overheard Jason in their bedroom, voice low and anxious. She's acting like she owns the place. Brianna, well, she kind of thinks she does. There was a pause, no denial. Only silence. And in that silence, I realized something important. They weren't scared of me leaving. They were scared of me staying. I didn't call anyone right away, not even Marcia. But 3 nights after the long-term care comment, I found myself rereading the receipts again, same numbers, same ink, same ache in my chest, and I thought, what am I waiting for? So I texted her. She replied in under 5 minutes. Tomorrow, Lou's Diner, 10 a.m. booth by the window. Lou's hadn't changed in decades, still smelled like burnt coffee and fryer oil, still had the best marble rye in Pittsburgh. Marcia was already sitting when I walked in, red cardigan, short white hair, reading glasses hanging on a chain like a librarian who could also punch you in the throat. She stood and hugged me before I could get a word out. All right, she said, sliding me a menu she knew I wouldn't touch. Tell me. I didn't sugarcoat it. I told her what I heard Brianna say, what Jason didn't say, the pills, the way they looked at me like I was just a spare piece of furniture they couldn't toss without someone noticing. Marcia listened without interrupting. Her jaw tightened just once when I mentioned Jason suggesting long-term care. That boy's spine has been missing since 2008, she muttered. Then she reached into her bag and handed me a business card, heavy stock, clean serif font. Rosa Delgado-esque. Elder Law and Protection Advocacy. She's quiet, Marcia said, but she doesn't miss. I called that afternoon, Rosa didn't ask how I got her number. She just said, "Tell me everything from the beginning, don't leave out anything, no matter how small." By the end of our conversation, she'd laid out the plan in 10 words. No threats, no reactions, only records, that's how we win. That night, I downloaded a voice memo app on my phone and started recording. After every dinner, once Eli had gone upstairs, I'd sit on my bed and speak plainly into the screen. Tuesday, 7:42 p.m. Brianna said, "Maybe your memory's not what it used to be." Jason didn't respond. The first few nights my hands shook a little, but soon it became routine, like brushing my teeth or locking my door. One evening, I noticed something off about my medication again. Same bottles, different pills. I Googled them, 2 were expired. One didn't match the prescription number at all. I laid them out on a towel, snapped photos from every angle, and sent them to Rosa. Her response came quickly. "Stop taking them, store them safely. I'll have a lab check the contents." The next morning, I bought a fireproof lockbox at a hardware store, cash only. I placed the bottles inside with a sticky note, "Do not touch." Rosa called later and said, "I want you to stop using their mailbox. Get a P.O. box, don't tell them." It made me feel paranoid for a second, but then I remembered the look on Brianna's face when she asked what day my pension deposit came through. I stood in line at the post office the next day behind a woman mailing baby shower invitations. When it was my turn, I asked for a small box, just enough for envelopes, statements, official notices. The clerk handed me the keys. I slipped them into my pocket and felt something new settle in my chest, control. That evening, I didn't speak at dinner. Jason asked if I was feeling off. I just nodded slightly and passed the salad. Later, after dishes and silence and more silence, Brianna whispered something to Jason in the hallway. I didn't hear all of it, but I caught this much. "She's being too quiet, that's not good." Dinner was chicken again, overcooked, dry, no seasoning. I cut it quietly with the side of my fork, not bothering to speak. Eli sat across from me, peeling the skin off his drumstick in strips, focused but distant. Brianna filled the silence. She always did when she thought she was winning. "When Grandma finally moves out," she said, tone light but deliberate, "we could turn her room into a gym, get one of those foldable Pelotons." Jason gave a small laugh, more a breath than a sound, but he didn't look up from his plate. Eli froze. His fork hovered above his green beans and then he dropped it without a word. I didn't react. I noted the time, 6:13 p.m. No one asked me how my day was, no one asked if I needed anything. I took a sip of water and stared straight ahead. Brianna stood up, wiped her hands on a napkin, and returned with a single sheet of paper in a plastic sleeve. "It's just a precaution," she said, sliding it next to my plate like a waitress offering the check. "In case there's ever an emergency, just sign at the bottom." I looked at it without touching it, durable power of attorney, pre-filled. 2 blank lines for witnesses already highlighted. Jason kept his eyes on his plate, didn't say a word. I nodded slightly, "Okay." Brianna blinked, surprised, "Really?" I said okay, I repeated. Then slowly I reached for the form, folded it once and slipped it under my placemat. She smiled tight, smug, and returned to her seat like she'd scored a point. After dinner, I carried the dishes to the sink, rinsed them, then excused myself upstairs. Once the door to my room clicked shut, I locked it, sat at my desk, pulled out my scanner. I made a digital copy of the form, front and back, saved it under the same folder I'd been building for weeks. Burden evidence. Then I opened my email and attached the file to a message addressed to Rosa. I didn't add any text in the body, just the subject line. "They're getting bolder." I hit send. It wasn't anger that pulsed in me, it was clarity. Their mistake wasn't just assuming I'd sign, they assumed I didn't know what it meant. But I'd handled forms like this at the post office for 20 years. I'd seen what people used them for: access, control, erasure. Later that night, there was a knock on my door. I didn't answer. Jason pushed it open anyway. He stepped inside without asking, arms crossed over his chest like he was the one owed an explanation. "Why are you acting like this?" he said. "You've been off, you're making things weird." I looked at him, not blinking. Is there something you need? He sighed, already frustrated. You didn't have to send that form to Rosa. Brianna saw the email pop up when she was checking your laptop for. He caught himself too late. I stood, checking my laptop for what? Jason looked away. You're being paranoid and ungrateful. I didn't yell, I didn't cry, I just stepped closer until we were face to face. You're standing in the room I bought, I said calmly, calling me ungrateful. He opened his mouth, closed it again, then walked out without another word. I waited until I heard the click of their bedroom door down the hall, then I turned off the light and lay down fully closed. From the other room, muffled but clear, I heard Eli say, I don't want her to move out. And Brianna's voice, sharper than usual. She won't have a choice. Rosa called 2 days after I sent the power of attorney form. I was in the backyard clipping dead stems off Brianna's hydrangeas, work she never touched, though she loved. Ed to boast about them to guests. Her voice was steady, almost gentle. Helen, I had the pills tested. I stopped cutting, the silence between us stretched. They were expired, she said. 3 different medications mixed into the same bottle. One is contraindicated for your heart condition. I closed my eyes, not in shock, not anymore, just confirmation, cold and heavy. We're filing a formal notice this afternoon with Adult Protective Services, Rosa continued. This qualifies as potential medical interference, neglect at minimum, possibly intent. Intent, the word hollowed me out from the ribs inward. I sat down on the stone wall bordering the garden and let the clippers rest in my lap. The sun was warm on my face, but I felt ice settling under my skin. What do I need to do? I asked. Rosa exhaled, measured and calm. First, revoke their access to your medical information and your providers. I'll send the documents, signed digitally. I'll file immediately. I nodded even though she couldn't see me. I didn't ask what would happen next. I already knew once something is written into record, it lives there. After we hung up, I walked inside and sat at the kitchen counter with my laptop. Brianna was folding towels in the living room, humming loudly enough to sound happy. Jason was upstairs, phone on speaker, laughing with a friend about golf plans like there wasn't a ticking bomb under his roof. Rosa's email came through, 5 attachments. I clicked each one, signed where indicated. With every signature, I felt something return to me slowly, steadily, like blood flow after pressure. Access revoked, contact permissions revoked, health proxies terminated. When I pressed submit, my hands didn't tremble. Next step, finances. I waited until late afternoon, then walked to the bank 3 blocks away. I spoke softly to the teller, a woman about my age, and opened a new personal checking account. Direct deposits rerouted, statements paperless, mail withheld. When she handed me the new debit card, she smiled and said, fresh start. I slid it into my wallet, something like that. On the walk home, the winter air cut at my cheeks. It felt clean, clarifying, the type of cold that makes you stand straighter. Rosa called again that evening. I'm drafting documentation to challenge previous asset transfers, she said. Including the house, will request deed history and financial traceability. If they ignored your legal interest, that's actionable. I sat very still on the edge of my bed, absorbing every word. When we file, they'll know, Rosa said gently. Are you ready for that? I looked at the closed door, the muffled voices down the hallway, the life they assumed they controlled. Yes, I said, I am. Dinner felt like a courtroom without a judge. The clinking of silverware was the only sound. Jason avoided my gaze. Brianna's smile was too tight, too bright, stretched thin over fear she couldn't name. Eli kept looking at me, then at them, tracing the tension like a storm front. No one spoke to me, no one asked how I was, no one joked about gyms or long-term care. They could feel something shifting, even if they didn't know what. I sat with my hands folded neatly in my lap and ate slowly, calmly, like a woman waiting for a train she could hear, but they could not. Halfway through the meal, Brianna finally looked up. What? She snapped. Why are you staring? I wasn't staring, I was memorizing. I smiled, not kindly. Just thinking, I said softly. Jason swallowed hard, his fork slipped and clattered against the plate. And in that instant I saw it, fear, real fear, the kind that only arrives when someone realizes control has started to slip from their hands. I finished my dinner in silence, stood, and placed my plate in the sink. Before I walked upstairs, I turned back slightly. "Nothing stays buried forever," I said quietly. Their faces changed, completely. Because they knew I wasn't talking about dirt. He knocked, but not really, one of those half-hearted taps that's more about announcing presence than asking permission. I was at my desk, reviewing the PDF Rosa had sent for the house deed review. Jason stepped in without waiting for an answer, his hands jammed into his pockets like a boy caught cheating. "Why are you doing this to us?" he asked. I didn't look up right away, let him sit in the discomfort, then I turned slowly, closing the laptop. "I'm not doing anything to you," I said calmly. "I'm doing this for me." He blinked, like the words didn't compute, like I hadn't spent the last 10 years blending into the wallpaper so he could forget I had needs, memory, leverage. Jason's side started pacing. "This is getting out of hand, Mom. Lawyers, bank changes." Rosa called the house. Brianna picked up and nearly had a panic attack. "She'll survive," I said. That stopped him cold. He stared at me like he didn't recognize who he was talking to. "I don't know what you think we've done to deserve this." I raised an eyebrow. "You do." He rubbed his face with both hands, exasperated. "You're acting like we've abused you." "You haven't acted like a son in a long time," I replied. I adjusted. "Now you will too." He flinched at that, and for a moment I thought he might yell, but he didn't. He turned and walked out, mumbling something under his breath. 10 minutes later, Brianna came in, holding her phone in one hand and a file folder in the other. She didn't bother with small talk. "You're being vindictive," she snapped. "You're poisoning Jason against me, Eli too. You think we don't notice how he sides with you now?" I stayed seated, reached into the top drawer of my desk and pulled out a printed spreadsheet, neatly organized, labeled, color-coded. I held it out to her. She hesitated, then snatched it from my hand. Rows of transactions, down payment, closing costs, appliances, mortgage bridge payments, emergency dental for Eli. The grand total at the bottom was underlined. Brianna stared at it like it was a foreign language. "Are you serious?" she said. "You're keeping score now." "I've been keeping records," I replied. "There's a difference." She crumpled the paper and threw it on the floor. "You're unbelievable." Then she stormed out, slamming the door behind her hard enough to rattle the picture frames. I waited for Jason to follow, to try and smooth things over like he always did. He didn't. When I peeked out later, the hallway was empty, their bedroom door closed, no voices, just the occasional low thud, probably drawers slamming or anger misdirected at innocent furniture. I went back to my desk, reopened the file Rosa had sent, cross-checked it with my own notes. Everything lined up. My timeline was clean, my receipts airtight, my motives bulletproof. At 9:23 p.m., there was a soft knock at my door. "Not Jason." "Come in," I said gently. Eli peeked through, clutching his blanket to his chest like he had when he was little and scared of thunderstorms. "Are you gonna be okay?" he asked. I smiled. "I already am." He walked over, hugged me tightly, then looked up with those same big eyes Jason used to have before he learned how to look away. "Mom says you're mad," he whispered. "I'm not mad," I said, "just awake." He nodded slowly, like he was still piecing that together. I walked him back to his room, tucked him in, kissed his forehead. When I returned to mine, I paused in the doorway. Across the hall, their light was still on, low voices arguing. And then I heard it, Jason's voice, quieter than usual. "Raw. She's not the same anymore." "No," I thought. "She is." They were already in the kitchen when I came downstairs, takeout bags on the counter, plastic containers open, the smell of sweet and sour chicken too strong, like it was trying to cover something else. Brianna looked up first. Her smile was immediate, wide, brittle. "I figured we could have an easy dinner tonight," she said, voice airy. "We all said things we regret this week." She slid a styrofoam box toward me across the table. "Let's just reset." Jason was quieter. He stood behind her, arms crossed, jaw tight. He didn't add anything, but he didn't leave either. I walked to the table and stared at the box. No label, no fork, no sincerity in the room. I picked it up gently and walked it to the porch without a word, opened the door, set it down on the step, shut the door behind me. Brianna blinked. Are you serious? I turned to her. You think I'm confused? I'm not. She swallowed hard. I'm just done being convenient. Jason exhaled sharply, running a hand through his hair. So that's it, you're just gonna go full legal on your own family. You already made this legal the day you tried to erase me from the paperwork. His voice rose slightly. Do you really want this to go to court? I didn't flinch, more than I ever wanted your help. That landed. I saw it in the way his eyes shifted, the way he looked suddenly small in a kitchen I helped pay for. For a moment, I could almost feel sorry for him, almost. Brianna stepped forward again. Helen, this is dramatic. We're family. Families fight. Families move on. I tilted my head. Is that what this is, a fight? No, I added before she could answer. It's clarity. You both treated me like a burden until I stopped carrying yours. Silence. Jason leaned back against the counter, eyes low. Eli appeared in the hallway, socked feet quiet on the floor. He stood behind the railing, watching everything, his hands gripping the wood, face unreadable. He didn't say a word. I met his gaze and gave the faintest shake of my head. Stay there. Brianna noticed him next. Eli, honey, why don't you go play your game or something? Her voice was too sweet, too staged. He didn't move. Jason tried, Bud, this is just grown-up stuff. Still, Eli stood there, silent, observant. I turned back to them. You've both spent so long performing normal that you forgot someone was always watching the rehearsal. Brianna rolled her eyes and grabbed the takeout. Bag, fine, enjoy your silence. She stormed out. Jason followed, slower this time, glancing back once like he thought I might stop him. I didn't. The door to their bedroom clicked shut. I stayed in the kitchen. Eli tiptoed, and a few minutes later, do you want me to eat with you? I smiled, touched his arm. Not tonight. He nodded like he understood more than I gave him credit for. After he left, I cleaned the counter, wiped down the table, took out the trash. All the while, the untouched takeout sat outside on the porch, growing colder by the minute, just like everything else between us. I opened the window above the sink, let the cold night air blow in hard. And I whispered just to myself. Tomorrow starts the real part. The courthouse in Allegheny County doesn't look like much from the outside, just glass, brick, and the smell of damp paper trailing through its lobby. But it has weight. The kind that settles on your shoulders when you walk through the doors and know the truth is about to be measured out loud. I wore my navy wool coat, the one I hadn't put on in years. I'd pressed it that morning, button by button like armor, no jewelry, no lipstick, just me, fully visible for the first time in a long time. Rosa met me at the entrance with a nod, brief and assured. You're ready, she said, not a question. I've been ready. We walked in together, but I sat alone. Jason and Brianna arrived 8 minutes late. Jason's shirt collar was wrinkled. Brianna wore a blazer 2 sizes too tight and still tried to smile at the judge. They hadn't expected an actual courtroom. They thought this would be a warning shot, a mediation, something soft. They didn't expect transcripts, receipts, exhibits labeled A through F. They didn't expect Rosa Delgado. She stood when the judge asked for opening remarks. No theatrics, just facts timed like a metronome. Your Honor, what we're presenting is not speculative, it's documented. This is a pattern of elder financial exploitation, medical interference, and emotional coercion. We are not here for sympathy, we are here for accountability. She handed over a file folder so thick it needed a clip to hold it shut. The judge raised his brows, flipped open the top page, and gestured for her to continue. Rosa clicked her pen and began. On April 9, 2014, Mrs. Pierce contributed $38,000 to the down payment of the home in question. She was verbally promised inclusion on the deed. That did not occur. Since then, I watched Brianna squirm in her seat as Rosa listed the utility payments, the mortgage bridge loans, the voided checks, the falsified pill bottles. Her foot tapped faster with every line item. Jason sat slumped silent, he hadn't even brought a folder. When it was my turn, the judge asked, "Mrs. Pierce, would you like to make a statement?" I stood, pulled a single folded page from my purse, and unfolded it slowly. "I am not here to argue," I said, voice steady. "I am not here to punish anyone. I am here because I kept records when no one kept respect. Because I paid into a house I was told would include me. Because my medications were tampered with and my silence was mistaken for consent. I am not confused. I am no longer convenient. I am asking the court to recognize what has already happened and allow me to move forward without obstruction." I sat down, that was all. Brianna started to speak, some stammer about miscommunication and misunderstandings, but the judge held up a hand before she could finish a full sentence. "This isn't a negotiation," he said. "You will remain silent unless directly addressed." She looked stunned. Jason looked like he wanted to sink through the floor. The ruling came 20 minutes later. The court finds sufficient cause to grant Mrs. Pierce full financial control over her pension, assets, and accounts. Medical proxies and access are to remain fully revoked. Furthermore, a property ownership review is ordered, pending full deed examination. Status hearing in 30 days. Gavel done. I didn't look at them as I stood. Rosa handed me a copy of the order, already stamped. Outside in the crisp December air, I took a long breath. The wind pulled at my coat, I let it. Behind me, I heard Brianna's voice, panicked, brittle. "She's trying to ruin us." But the judge had seen through that. Now the state would too. 2 weeks after the hearing, I sat across from Rosa in her downtown office, a plain manila folder between us. "No more edits?" I asked, scanning the final document she'd placed on the desk. "None," she said. "It's all here, the trust, the designation, the clause. Once you sign, it's irrevocable." I ran my fingers over the first page. It was colder than I expected. Somehow, the reality of it final felt less like a choice and more like the confirmation of one I'd already made. "Marcia agreed to act as executor?" I asked. Rosa nodded. She said she'd consider it an honor. I signed. Another page. Initial. Signature. Notarized. The trust was filed th. At afternoon, the house, every inch of it from the basement they never finished to the backyard I still tended, was no longer theirs to assume. It now sat inside a protective shell, immune to their hands. My name remained on the front step, but its future belonged to Eli. And only Eli. Heir designation, Eli J. Pierce, to be inherited upon legal adulthood. Executor Marcia Levinson. Stipulation: no contact permitted from Jason or Brianna Pierce following my passing. The legalese was dry, but I knew what it meant. Peace, boundaries that didn't depend on their behavior, only on my foresight. Rosa closed the file and locked it in her cabinet. "Next up, civil suit. The judge gave us standing. We'll file the damages brief by next week." "Will I need to speak?" "Eventually," she said, "but not for this next part." I nodded, grateful. This wasn't about public vindication anymore. It was about architecture, quiet scaffolding to ensure the life I'd built didn't end in someone else's wreckage. The courthouse hallway was quieter than usual when I returned later that week for filing. I passed Jason and Brianna near the clerk's desk. They didn't see me at first. Jason's tie was askew. Brianna had dark circles under her eyes, her jaw set tight. She was flipping through papers frantically, whispering something sharp. I didn't stop walking. But they noticed. Brianna turned just as I passed, clutching her purse with both hands. "What is she doing here again?" she hissed. "She filed something else," Jason muttered, glancing after me. "She's not done." "No," I thought, "I'm just getting started." By the time I reached the end of the hall, I heard her voice crack. "She's ruining our lives." I kept walking. Didn't turn around. Didn't offer comfort or threat. Because I wasn't trying to ruin them. I was building a future that didn't require them at all. Rosa caught up to me at the stairwell and handed over the official stamped copy. "Civil suit is logged, court date TBA, but we're solid." I slid the file into my bag without reading it. I didn't need to anymore. The facts would speak for themselves now. My presence was no longer required to prove I mattered. Back at the house, the silence was different, not tense, hollow. Brianna didn't come out of their room that evening. Jason avoided me entirely. Eli sat on the floor with his sketchpad, doodling quietly in the living room. I glanced at his drawing in passing. This time it was a treehouse with one ladder, no shared steps. Just one way in. One way up. That night I opened my window again and let the cold air pour into the room. I didn't whisper this time. I just let the wind carry the weight of what I'd done. The letter came folded in thirds, tucked inside a blue construction paper cover with private written across the front in pencil. Eli had handed it to me a week earlier, no fanfare, no build-up. He just walked into my room after dinner, holding it in both hands like it might break. "You don't have to read it," he said, "but I want someone to know what I saw." I didn't open it. I just pulled him into my arms and held him, tighter than usual. Rosa had it notarized the next morning, logged under his full name, Elliot James Pierce, age 10, witnessed, unprompted, uncoached. Today, in the courtroom, it rested in Rosa's hands, creased gently but clean, the way a letter from a child should be. She handed it to the clerk without a word. The judge took it, adjusted his glasses, and began to read silently. The room hushed in a way even closing arguments couldn't accomplish. Like every person could feel something delicate entering the space. A minute passed. Then two. When the judge looked up again, he cleared his throat and said, "This is a written statement submitted voluntarily by Elliot Pierce, grandson of the claimant, Mrs. Helen Pierce." He paused. Then read aloud. "My grandma never yelled, not even when my mom told her to leave the kitchen or when my dad just sat there saying nothing. She didn't slam doors or yell back, she just left the room. Once I saw her cry in the garage. She thought I was upstairs. I didn't say anything, but I saw. She makes my favorite grilled cheese. She always has real butter. She helps me with math. She puts my drawings on her door even when they're messy. She says thank you when I help her with stairs even though I don't do it perfectly. She didn't do anything wrong. I think she just wants to live somewhere where people are nice to her. And if this letter helps with that, I'm glad I wrote it." The judge blinked twice, folded the letter slowly, and placed it back inside the cover. A silence followed that no lawyer could fill. Brianna broke first. "That's manipulation," she snapped. "He's a child, he doesn't understand the situation." Jason didn't echo her. He stared straight ahead as if the air in front of him might reveal a different ending. The judge didn't respond to Brianna's outburst. He didn't need to. His voice was quieter when he spoke again, but less firm. "This court finds that Mrs. Helen Pierce has demonstrated full legal competency, financial independence, and grounds for restitution. Her medical power of attorney remains fully revoked, and all emergency access from the defendants is to remain terminated." He turned a page. "In light of testimony both direct and submitted, the court sees no compelling reason to grant reinstatement of rights previously stripped. Furthermore, the evidence supports a pattern of coercive behavior and medical neglect." Brianna opened her mouth again, but no sound came. She shook her head slowly, like she thought the ruling would change if she just refused to believe it. And then she broke. Not a single tear, all of them. Her face collapsed into her hands, her body folding in on itself like a collapsing tent. Sharp sobs cracked through the courtroom. She didn't even try to speak. Jason stayed frozen. He looked down, not at me, not at Eli's letter, not at the judge. Just down, like the floor might open and spare him the shame. I didn't watch them long. I turned to Rosa. She met my eyes and gave a single tiny nod. "It's over." I nodded back. Not in triumph. In truth. When the judge dismissed the room, I stood first. Jason didn't move. Brianna sat crumpled beside him, wiping her face with a tissue pulled from her purse with shaking hands. Outside, Eli waited on the wooden bench in the hallway, legs swinging gently above the floor, his sketchpad in his lap. He looked up as I walked out and broke into a shy smile. "Did it help?" he asked. "The letter." I opened my arms. He ran into them. "You saw more than they thought," I whispered into his hair, "and you remembered it right." He held me tighter. Across the hall, Rosa stood with the signed court order in her hands. Jason watched us from a distance. He didn't come close, he didn't say goodbye. Brianna was nowhere in sight. We didn't wait. Eli and I walked together down the hallway, his hand in mine, his steps slow and sure. Just before we reached the door, he looked up again. "Can we get pie now?" I smiled and pushed open the exit. We earned it. By the time the civil hearing came, the courthouse had started to feel like muscle memory. Same elevator, same beige walls, same security guard who gave me a faint nod without asking why I was there again. But I wasn't nervous anymore. There's a strange stillness that comes after you've already lost something. After you've already buried your illusions, all that's left is truth, and this day it would be written down, stamped, and filed. Rosa met me outside the courtroom with a single binder under her arm and a travel mug in hand. "You're ready," she said. "I've been ready." Inside, Brianna sat stiffly on the other side of the aisle. Her blazer was crisp, but the neckline was uneven. She looked like she'd gotten dressed in a panic. Jason beside her, hollow-eyed and silent, flipping a pen over and over in his hands like he thought it could save him. They didn't bring a lawyer. The judge was new, a substitute maybe, or just reassigned. Younger, sharper, his gaze didn't linger, he wanted facts. Rosa rose first, no hesitation. "Your Honor, we're here to establish and enforce the financial interest of my client, Mrs. Helen Pierce, in the jointly inhabited residence located at 145 Glenmont Lane." She passed the binder to the clerk, who handed it to the judge. "Inside, you'll find verified records of personal contributions made directly from Mrs. Pierce's account to the down payment, closing costs, and multiple subsequent payments tied to renovations and mortgage gaps." She flipped to a specific tab. Tab C contains receipts from HVAC repair. Tab D, emergency plumbing replacement. Tab E, child dental care, all withdrawn from Mrs. Pierce's funds without documented repayment or acknowledgement of stake. She paused, let the room sit with the weight of that truth. Then added, "This was not a gift. It was a financial structure built on expectation and trust, both of which were violated." The judge turned the pages slowly, no questions yet. Brianna fidgeted, crossed her legs, uncrossed them. Jason didn't move. The judge finally looked up. "Is there any response from the other party?" Silence. Jason stared at the desk. Brianna finally stood. "We weren't trying to take anything from her. We all lived in that house. Families help each other." Rosa raised an eyebrow. "Would you like to submit documentation of your own contributions to the down payment?" Brianna sat down without answering. The judge continued. "This court finds Helen Pierce holds verifiable, quantifiable financial interest in the property at 145 Glenmont Lane. All associated documents and receipts submitted have met the burden of proof. As such, this court orders a freeze on all current claims to the property. A financial valuation and equity reassessment will follow." He banged the gavel once. Brianna's jaw clenched. She looked like she wanted to object but couldn't find the words. Still, I didn't speak. I didn't have to. The math spoke for me now. Outside the courtroom, Jason followed me into the hallway. His steps were slow, heavy. "Mom," he said, voice barely audible, this doesn't feel like us." I stopped walking, turned to face him. "You're right," I said, "because the version of us you remember only worked when I stayed quiet." He rubbed his face with both hands. "Can't we just move past this, forget the court, the freeze order, the paperwork?" I stared at him for a long moment. "You already ruined the family," I said, "I just filed it." That silenced him, not with offense but realization. Rosa stepped beside me a moment later. "We'll proceed with the equity mediation and property division next. We'll keep it fair." Jason nodded faintly but didn't respond. He stepped back further into the hallway. He looked like he'd been sent out of a meeting he didn't understand but finally accepted he didn't control. We left him standing there. Back at the house I'd built and paid into, the one they thought they could quietly own, it looked different, not grander, not sadder, just truthful. The front door creaked when I opened it. I stepped inside and didn't take off my coat. The air felt colder than it used to, not hostile, just hollow, like it knew it wasn't mine anymore, but not theirs either. Eli was sitting in the living room, sketchpad in his lap. He looked up, alert but calm. "Is it over?" he asked. "Not yet," I said, "but the locks are changing." He nodded and kept drawing. Upstairs, I added the court's freeze order to the folder in my drawer, page 47. Another weight documented. Another chain broken. And just as I closed the drawer, I heard Jason's voice from the hall, frantic, hushed. "She's not bluffing." He was right. I was. He didn't come to the house, he wouldn't have dared. Instead, he showed up at Rosa's office. No appointment, no call ahead, just a quiet message relayed by the receptionist. "Jason Pierce is here. He says he only needs 5 minutes, alone." I was there finalizing the post-settlement documentation, just a few loose ends. I told Rosa to let him in. He entered like a man walking into his own punishment, shoulders hunched, eyes avoiding mine, coat still damp from the sleet outside. He stood there for a moment, unsure of whether to speak or sit. I didn't offer him a chair, but I didn't send him away either. "Thanks for seeing me," he said, voice low. "I didn't know where else to." I gestured to the seat across from me, nothing generous about it, just efficient. He sat, cleared his throat, hands clasped tightly, turning over on themselves like they were trying to take the fall for everything. "I know how this looks," he said, "but I just want to say that this doesn't have to be permanent. We don't have to stay here." Still, I said nothing. "Brianna," he started, then paused. "Brianna's not doing great. She's blaming me, says I let it go too far, and maybe I did, but things snowballed. We were overwhelmed, and I guess we just thought you'd be quieter. You always were." He looked up at me. "I didn't expect you to fight back like this." I slid an envelope across the table, unsealed, stamped, notarized, witnessed. He stared at it for a moment before slowly reaching out. "What is it?" "Your copy," I said. He pulled out the single page and read silently. His lips moved, forming each word like he needed to feel them physically. "Disinheritance notice. 0% estate allocation. No financial claim. No healthcare proxy. No executor role. All previously granted powers revoked in full." He blinked rapidly, but the tears didn't fall, not yet. "Mom." Still, I said nothing. I didn't mean for it to get this far. I met his eyes for the first time in weeks. My voice was calm, steady. "That's the difference," I said. "I did." That landed somewhere deep. I saw it in the way he slumped slightly in his chair, the breath he didn't realize he'd been holding. "I was scared," he whispered. "So was I." Silence. Outside the glass walls of the office, Rosa stood by the reception desk talking to Marcia, who'd come by to sign witness forms. Through the front window, I could see my car idling in the lot. Eli sat in the back seat, scribbling in his sketchpad, completely unaware of what was being cut loose inside. Jason followed my gaze. "He's here." I nodded. "He won't understand," he said. But I knew better. "He already does." Jason stared down at the paper again, folding it into neat, uneven thirds. "I guess this is it," he murmured, trying to sound like it didn't hurt. "It is." He stood, not all at once, but like he had to make peace with the idea that no one was going to stop him. He looked at me one more time, maybe searching for some flicker of the woman who used to protect him. But I didn't blink. He left. No door slam, no raised voice. Just footsteps fading down the hallway. When I stepped outside, the cold hit my face like a reset button. Eli rolled the window down halfway and peered out at me. "Was that Dad?" "Yes." "Did he cry?" I paused. "No, but he wanted to." Eli didn't grin, he didn't try to cheer me up. He just nodded and looked back down at his sketchpad. I got in the car, buckled in, started the engine. Jason's car was already gone, Brianna wasn't with him. As I pulled out onto the street, Eli leaned forward and lightly tapped my shoulder. "Are we gonna be okay now?" I kept my eyes on the road. "I don't know yet," I said, "but now we can find out." The final hearing began at 9:01 a.m. I wore the same navy coat, same shoes, same quiet expression. but I wasn't the same woman who wore them months ago. This wasn't about regaining something anymore. It was about making sure it was never taken again. The courtroom was colder than usual, not in temperature but in tone. The bailiff barely looked up. The clerk moved like she was bracing for something. Even the judge, a different one this time, older and deliberate, had a look that said, "I've read everything, just confirm it for the record." Rosa stood when called, her hands rested lightly on a single binder. No briefcase, no laptop, just the file we'd built piece by piece, truth by truth. "Your Honor," she began, "we are presenting today the culmination of 11 months of documentation, financial statements, verbal commitments, digital correspondence, medical interference, and breach of fiduciary trust. All linked, all time-stamped, all verifiable." She turned calmly to the screen the court used for evidence display. With a nod, the clerk activated it. Slide 1, a ledger of payments, my name, my account. A decade of transactions that built a house I was never allowed to own. Rosa walked through each point without drama. She didn't need it. Her voice was metronomic, almost gentle. It was the confidence of someone who knew the floor beneath her wouldn't collapse. Brianna sat across the aisle, breathing hard through her nose. Her hands twisted a tissue so tightly it looked like it might rip in half. Jason stared at the floor like he wanted to fall through it. Next came the logs. "Exhibit C," Rosa said, "daily notes from Mrs. Pierce, dated, signed, consistent, including statements made to her in front of a minor and patterns of isolation and verbal coercion." She read one aloud. "March 2nd, 7:52 p.m. Brianna said, 'You don't get to claim the house just because you wrote a check.'" Jason didn't respond. Then the pills. They were in evidence bags now, sealed and labeled. Rosa submitted the lab report alongside the medical proxy revocation Rosa had filed months earlier. Everything tracked: expired medication, wrong pills, mislabeling, each with chain of custody documentation. "This is not an accident," Rosa said. "It's not just elder neglect, it's conscious disregard bordering on endangerment." The room was still. Even the air held its breath. The judge adjusted his glasses and looked at me directly. "Mrs. Pierce," he asked, "would you like to make a statement?" I shook my head. "No, Your Honors." Because nothing I said would carry more weight than the record that spoke for itself. The judge nodded once and leaned back in his chair. There was a long pause before he began. I could feel Brianna shifting beside Jason, her breathing uneven now. "This court finds," he said slowly, "that Helen Pierce holds documented, provable financial interest in the residence located at 145 Glenmont Lane. She is therefore entitled to equitable reimbursement and property claim consideration." Jason closed his eyes. The judge continued. "Furthermore, the court acknowledges credible evidence of medical interference and emotional manipulation. Power of attorney and all related access remain permanently revoked." That's when Brianna broke. It wasn't loud at first, just a sharp inhale, the kind that tears through someone before they can stop it. Then the sob hit, full-bodied. She covered her face, gasped something through her hands, tried to stand, failed, sank into the bench like her own body didn't want to hold her anymore. Jason didn't move. He didn't touch her. He didn't say a word. The judge paused briefly, then delivered the final blow. "Pending review of the full financial landscape and property appraisal, this court will pursue restitution damages. A separate hearing will be scheduled within 45 days." He banged the gavel. Session closed. Still, Brianna wept, shoulders trembling, face hidden like grief had found her too late to negotiate with it. I didn't look at her. I looked at Rosa. She gave me the faintest nod, the one we'd agreed on, the signal that it was done, really done. I returned it, no tears, no relief, just recognition. We stood together and walked out without a sound. Jason remained on the bench, staring at the floor. Outside, the winter wind pushed across the courthouse steps. Rosa handed me the stamped judgment and zipped her coat. "Rain's coming," she said. "Let it." We walked toward the car in silence. The wind whipped my coat open, but I didn't close it. Behind me, the courtroom door creaked. I didn't turn back. I never would again. The settlement came through on a Wednesday quietly without drama. No more hearings, no more statements, just a direct deposit confirmation from Rosa and a 2-line email. It's finalized, you're free. I didn't respond right away. I read it 3 times, then closed the laptop and stood by the window of the bedroom that wasn't really mine anymore. Outside, the for sale sign still leaned at a slight angle in the yard. A wind chime Brianna had never taken down clinked without melody. I could smell the faintest trace of someone else's dinner through the open kitchen window. I packed my things that same afternoon. Not much, just the photo albums they'd forgotten I had, Eli's old drawings, the court documents, and my journal. The navy coat I wore to every hearing went on the top of the pile. I folded it neatly, armor retired. The apartment was small, but it was mine. 1 bedroom, 3rd floor, corner unit, brick exterior, walking distance to the library. Rosa had connected me with the right realtor. Marcia helped me read every clause of the lease agreement, even though I didn't need help anymore. Still, she sat beside me at Rosa's office when I signed the purchase papers, her hand resting lightly on mine. No co-signers, Rosa had noted with a smile. No shared deed, just one name. Exactly one, I said. The apartment smelled like fresh paint and possibility. I brought in my own curtains, used the good dishes for every meal, and bought a new kettle just because I liked the color. The kitchen was barely big enough for 2 people to stand side by side, but it didn't need to be. Eli started coming over every other weekend. He'd arrive with a backpack and too many questions. He never asked about Jason or Brianna anymore, not directly. He'd just look around and say things like, "This place feels calm," or "It's quieter when people don't yell." We baked banana bread once and forgot the sugar. It tasted awful, but we ate every bite. I started volunteering again at the library, just a few mornings a week. Nothing heavy, mainly helping kids find storybooks or shelving returns from the early morning rush. I liked the smell of paper and the murmur of hushed voices. No one there looked at me like I was fading. They looked at me like I was present. Sometimes I'd sit in the corner with a journal and write letters I never mailed. One to Eli, one to my younger self, one to a future I'd finally stepped into without apology. Then one morning, a letter came from the state. Plain envelope, official seal. Elder Protection Case 4918B. Status closed. Outcome, judgment in favor of claimant Helen Pierce. Findings, financial exploitation, medical interference, coercive behavior. Action, estate and legal rights fully enforced. No appeal. No further review. Just closure. That night I made soup from scratch, lit a candle on the table, not for grief but for recognition, for the woman I'd stopped hiding, for the one I remembered before they tried to rewrite me. I didn't cry. I just sat with it, warm bowl in my hands, flicker of flame steady in the dark. Later, while washing dishes, I caught my reflection in the window above the sink. The streetlights cast a glow across my face that made me look still and alive. Like someone who had come all the way back from the edge of being forgotten and found a home that didn't ask her to shrink. Eli was asleep on the pull-out couch, a blanket wrapped around him like a cocoon. His sketchpad rested on the floor beside him. I picked it up gently, careful not to wake him. On the page, a treehouse again, but different this time. No fences, no walls, just one tall ladder. And my name carved into the door. I placed the sketchpad beside him, kissed his forehead, and turned off the light. The mediation room was smaller than a courtroom but colder in a different way. The air was too clean, the table too polished. One of those places that pretended neutrality while everyone inside knew which way the story leaned. I didn't bring a bag, just my coat, my hands, and my silence. Rosa sat beside me, flipping through notes she didn't need to reference. I already knew she wouldn't speak unless I did. That was the agreement. Across the table, Jason looked like someone waiting for a bus that wouldn't come. He kept checking the clock. Brianna sat stiffly beside him, arms crossed, her apology already coiled like something sharp in her throat. The mediator began with protocol, tone cheerful, as if anything in this room could be solved with kindness. Then Jason leaned forward. I just want to say, he began, that none of this was ever supposed to happen. We were stressed. Brianna was working double shifts. I wasn't myself. We thought you'd bounce back and… He stopped when he realized I wasn't nodding or blinking. Just listening. Brianna took her turn next. Her voice was level, too level. We regret how things were handled, she said. We let things slip. You didn't deserve that, but… Dragging it all through court, turning Eli against us. Rosa shifted slightly, but I held up a hand, not to them, to her. I reached into my coat pocket and slid a folded page across the table. No envelope, no explanation. Brianna eyed it like it might detonate. Jason unfolded it with trembling fingers. His lips moved as he read. This is final. You are no longer my responsibility. You forfeited access when you mistook me for someone who would not fight back. You buried your shame in my silence. I do not hate you, but I do not owe you repair. I have already built a life without your names in it. Brianna's mouth opened, but nothing came out, not even breath. Jason swallowed hard. Please, he whispered, just don't erase us completely. I stood. The chair made no sound as I pushed it in. I didn't look at Rosa, I didn't look back. No goodbye, no rage, no lecture. Just the sound of the door clicking shut behind me. That night I sat at my desk, a single envelope addressed and sealed in front of me. Inside, a letter. A certified slip for Eli's college fund. And the signed deed to my apartment. He wouldn't get it now, not yet, but one day. He'd open it and know that I saw him. That he was the only one who didn't need to earn forgiveness because he never broke the trust in the first place. I slipped the envelope into the outgoing mail slot at the corner of my street. The wind stung my eyes, but I didn't blink. Back home, I poured tea and opened my journal for the last time. The final page. I didn't write much, just what needed to be remembered. She called me a burden, but only one of us collapsed under weight. I closed the book, tied the ribbon, put it on the shelf next to Eli's sketchpads and the photo albums they thought I'd thrown out. And then I did something I hadn't done in a very long time. I turned off every light in the apartment, lit a single candle in the window, and watched it flicker. Not for grief. Not for revenge. For peace. For the part of me that had been waiting all these years to see myself not as someone survived, but as someone chosen. By herself. Finally. When the judge read the paperwork, she cried. I didn't. I had already left that courtroom years ago.